The desert wind carried fine grains of sand through the small window of the forward operating base armory, settling on every surface like a persistent reminder of where they were. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos sat at the metal workbench, her movements precise and methodical as she disassembled her 338 Lapua Magnum rifle. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across her weathered hands as they worked with the familiarity of someone who had performed this ritual countless times. Maria had been deployed to Afghanistan for 8 months now, and the rifle had become an extension of herself. Every scratch, every wear mark told a story of missions completed, of distances calculated, of decisions made in the space between heartbeats. The weapon was more than just equipment to her. It was the tool that had kept her squad alive through 17 separate operations in the volatile Kunar province. She pulled the bolt from the action and examined it under the bright light, checking for any signs of wear or fouling that might affect accuracy. In her line of work, a fraction of an inch could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The cleaning ritual wasn't just maintenance, it was meditation, a way to process the weight of responsibility that came with being one of the most effective marksmen in her battalion. The armory door creaked open, and Corporal Jenkins stuck his head in. "Santos, you've got a visitor. General Morrison wants to see you in the briefing room. Something about your service record." Jenkins paused, noting the surprised look on Maria's face. "He flew in from Kabul this morning specifically to meet with you." Maria's hands stilled on the rifle. General Morrison was a legend in the Army, a man who had served in every major conflict since the Gulf War. For him to personally visit a forward operating base meant something significant was happening. She had heard rumors that he was conducting reviews of exceptional personnel, possibly for new assignments or commendations, but she never imagined she would be on that list. "Did he say what this was about?" Maria asked, carefully setting down the bolt and reaching for a cleaning cloth. "Negative. Just said to bring your complete service jacket and be ready for a formal interview." Jenkins glanced at the partially disassembled rifle. "You might want to finish that later." Maria nodded, quickly but carefully beginning to reassemble her weapon. Her mind raced through possibilities. In 18 months of deployment across 2 tours, she had earned a reputation for precision and reliability. Her commanders had consistently rated her performance as exceptional, and her successful completion of high-priority missions had caught attention at higher levels of command. But there was something else that set her apart, something that was carefully documented in her service record, but rarely discussed openly. The numbers. The statistics that defined her effectiveness as a sniper were unlike anything her superiors had seen from someone of her rank and experience level. Each confirmed elimination was meticulously recorded, verified, and filed according to strict military protocols. As she slid the bolt back into place and secured the action, Maria thought about the missions that had brought her to this point. The Taliban commander who had been coordinating attacks on supply convoys, the IED specialist who had killed dozens of coalition forces, the foreign fighter who had been training local insurgents in advanced tactics. Each shot had been authorized, necessary, and executed with the precision that her training demanded. She had never taken pride in the killing itself, but she understood her role in the larger mission. Every threat she eliminated meant American soldiers who would go home to their families. Every successful mission meant villages that could rebuild without fear of reprisal. The weight of that responsibility was something she carried quietly, professionally, and with the understanding that it was simply part of her duty. Maria finished reassembling the rifle and locked it in the weapon rack. She straightened her desert combat uniform, checked her appearance in the small mirror mounted on the armory wall, and gathered her service records from her footlocker. The manila folder was thicker than most, filled with mission reports, commendation letters, and the detailed documentation that accompanied every aspect of her specialized role. As she walked across the compound toward the briefing room, she noticed other soldiers watching her with a mixture of respect and curiosity. Word traveled fast on a small base, and everyone knew that a visit from a general meant something important was happening. The afternoon heat shimmered off the concrete barriers and prefabricated buildings that made up their temporary home in this hostile landscape. The briefing room was located in the command building, a reinforced structure that served as the nerve center for operations in the region. Maria paused outside the door, took a deep breath, and knocked twice before entering. General Morrison was exactly what she had expected: tall, distinguished, with silver hair and the bearing of someone who had spent decades in uniform. But what surprised her was the intensity of his gaze as she entered and rendered a crisp salute. This wasn't a routine visit or a standard interview. There was something specific he wanted to know, something that had brought him hundreds of miles from headquarters to speak with her personally. General Morrison returned her salute with a sharp nod and gestured toward the chair across from his position at the briefing table. The room was stark and functional, with maps of the region covering one wall and communication equipment lining another. A single laptop computer sat open in front of the general, its screen reflecting the harsh overhead lighting. "At ease, Sergeant Santos. Please, take a seat." His voice was gravelly, seasoned by years of command decisions and difficult conversations. Maria settled into the metal chair, placing her service folder on the table between them. The general's eyes moved from her face to the folder, then back again. "I've been reviewing personnel files across the theater of operations," Morrison began, opening the laptop and scrolling through what appeared to be a database of soldier records. "Specifically, I've been looking at our most effective assets in specialized roles. Your name came up repeatedly in discussions with regional commanders." Maria remained silent, waiting for him to continue. She had learned early in her military career that senior officers appreciated brevity and directness rather than unnecessary conversation. The general clicked through several screens before stopping at what was obviously her complete service record. "Your file makes for interesting reading, Sergeant. 18 months in theater, 47 confirmed eliminations, 0 missed targets on priority missions." He looked up from the screen. "Those numbers are remarkable for any sniper, but particularly for someone with your level of experience." The statistics hung in the air between them. Maria had known that her success rate was high, but hearing the numbers spoken aloud by a general officer gave them a weight she hadn't fully appreciated. 47 confirmed eliminations meant 47 individual human beings who had posed threats to American forces and Allied personnel. "Each of those eliminations was authorized and necessary, sir," Maria said quietly. "I followed protocols and rules of engagement in every instance." "I have no doubt about that, Sergeant. What interests me is the methodology behind these results." Morrison turned the laptop so she could see the screen. "Your average engagement distance is over 800 meters. Your success rate in adverse weather conditions is 100%. You've successfully completed priority target eliminations that other teams couldn't accomplish." The screen showed a detailed breakdown of her missions, including environmental factors, target profiles, and tactical circumstances. Maria saw her own professional life reduced to data points and statistical analysis, but she understood why the information was being compiled this way. In military planning, everything came down to measurable outcomes and predictable results. "The mission in Wardak province last month," Morrison continued, scrolling to a specific entry. "Taliban regional commander, 875-meter shot in 40-knot crosswinds. Mission planning estimated a 30% probability of success under those conditions. You completed the elimination with a single shot." Maria remembered that mission vividly. The target had been coordinating attacks against medical convoys traveling between villages. Intelligence indicated that he was planning a major operation against a hospital that served both military personnel and local civilians. The window of opportunity had been narrow, the conditions challenging, but the consequences of failure would have been catastrophic. The shot was within my capabilities, sir. I calculated for wind drift and elevation, waited for a momentary lull in the gusts, and engaged when the target presented a clear profile. She paused. The mission required that level of precision. General Morrison nodded slowly, but his expression remained serious. Tell me about the Helmand operation 6 weeks ago. Multiple targets, night conditions, thermal imaging only. That mission had been different from her typical assignments. Instead of a single high-value target, intelligence had identified a meeting of 5 key insurgent leaders planning coordinated attacks across the province. The opportunity to eliminate multiple threats simultaneously had been too valuable to pass up, but it required a level of speed and accuracy that pushed even her considerable skills to their limits. 3 eliminations in under 2 minutes, sir. The targets were meeting in a compound approximately 600 meters from my position. Thermal imaging confirmed their identities and positions. I engaged in order of priority as designated by intelligence briefings. In under 2 minutes, Morrison repeated, making a note on a paper pad beside the laptop. With thermal imaging that provided limited visual confirmation and no opportunity for follow-up shots if you missed. Maria understood now why the general had made the trip to speak with her personally. These weren't routine combat actions or standard sniper missions. The combination of distance, conditions, and success rate represented something exceptional, something that had attracted attention at the highest levels of military command. "Sergeant, I want you to understand something," Morrison said, closing the laptop and leaning back in his chair. "What you've accomplished here is beyond exceptional. It's unprecedented for someone of your rank and experience level. These numbers suggest capabilities that we typically only see in our most elite special operations units." The weight of his words settled over her like a heavy blanket. Maria had always focused on the immediate mission requirements, on doing her job to the best of her ability and ensuring that her actions contributed to the safety of her fellow soldiers. She hadn't considered how her individual performance might appear when viewed collectively or analyzed statistically. "Sir, I've simply tried to execute my duties according to training and military standards. Each mission was approached with the seriousness it deserved, and I applied the skills that my instructors taught me at sniper school." Morrison smiled for the first time since she had entered the room. "Modesty is admirable, Sergeant, but false modesty serves no one. What you've accomplished requires not just training, but natural ability, dedication, and a level of mental discipline that can't be taught." He opened a different folder that had been sitting beside the laptop. "Which brings me to why I'm here. The Army is developing a new program, a specialized unit that will handle the most challenging and critical missions in current and future theaters of operation. We need personnel with proven capabilities under extreme conditions." Maria felt her pulse quicken. Special assignment programs were career-defining opportunities, but they also meant leaving behind the familiar structure and support systems she had come to depend on. Her squad, her routine, her role in the current mission, all of that would change if she accepted whatever the general was about to offer. This program would require additional training, psychological evaluation, and a commitment to missions that might take you into environments even more challenging than what you've experienced here, Morrison continued. But it would also represent recognition of your unique capabilities and an opportunity to serve at the highest levels of military operations. The briefing room felt smaller suddenly, as if the walls were closing in around the magnitude of what was being discussed. Maria understood that moments like these defined careers and lives, that the decision she made in the next few minutes would shape everything that came after. Maria stared at the folder in front of General Morrison, knowing that inside those pages was an opportunity that could reshape her entire military career. The silence stretched between them as she processed the weight of what was being offered. Special operations assignments meant leaving behind everything familiar, but they also represented the highest level of trust and responsibility the military could place in a soldier. Sir, may I ask what type of missions this program would involve? Her voice was steady, but inside she felt the familiar tension that came before making any critical decision under pressure. Morrison opened the folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The missions would be classified at the highest levels, often involving targets that conventional forces couldn't engage due to political sensitivity or tactical impossibility. You'd be working with intelligence agencies, foreign military units, and in some cases completely independently. The implications were clear. This wasn't just about superior marksmanship anymore. This was about operating in the shadows, taking on assignments where failure wasn't just mission failure, it was international incident material. The kind of work that required not just technical skill, but absolute psychological reliability under conditions that most soldiers would never face. The psychological evaluation you mentioned, sir, what would that involve? Extensive testing to ensure you can handle the isolation, the moral complexity, and the personal cost of this type of work. Morrison's expression grew more serious. Some of the finest soldiers we've ever had couldn't pass those evaluations. There's no shame in that. This program isn't for everyone. Maria thought about her current squad, the soldiers she had served alongside for months. Corporal Williams, who sent letters to his daughter every day. Sergeant Kim, who had saved her life during a mortar attack 3 months ago. Private Rodriguez, barely 19, who still called his mother every Sunday when satellite communications allowed it. Accepting this assignment meant leaving them behind, potentially forever. But she also thought about the missions she had completed, the threats she had eliminated, and the American lives that had been saved as a result. If her skills could be applied to even more critical situations, if she could prevent larger-scale attacks or protect more soldiers from harm, didn't she have an obligation to accept that responsibility? How much time do I have to decide, sir? I need an answer before I leave tomorrow morning. This program is moving forward with or without you, but the selection window is narrow. We've identified only 3 candidates with the necessary qualifications, and you're the first one I've approached. 3 candidates in the entire military. Maria felt the full weight of that statement. Whatever standards they were applying, whatever combination of skills and psychological profile they were looking for, she represented something rare enough that a general had personally traveled to a forward operating base to recruit her. If I accept, when would the assignment begin? You'd be rotated back to the States within 2 weeks for specialized training. The program is 18 months initially, with the possibility of extension based on performance and mission requirements. Morrison paused. I should also mention that successful completion of this program typically leads to rapid promotion and consideration for advanced leadership positions. The offer was everything a career soldier could hope for: recognition, advancement, and the opportunity to serve at the highest levels of military operations. But Maria also understood that accepting meant crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Special operations changed people, sometimes in ways that made it difficult to return to conventional military life or civilian society. She looked out the small window of the briefing room toward the compound where her squad was probably preparing for evening chow. In a few hours, they would gather around the radio to listen for messages from home, share stories, and maintain the bonds that kept them functioning as a unit in this hostile environment. It was a routine that had become precious to her, a reminder of why she served and what she was protecting. Sir, I want to be certain I understand the commitment. This isn't just an assignment, it's a fundamental change in how I serve. That's correct, Sergeant. Once you enter this program, your military career takes a different path. You'll still be serving your country, but in ways that most soldiers never experience. Morrison leaned forward slightly. The question is whether you're ready for that level of responsibility and sacrifice. Maria closed her eyes for a moment, thinking about the weight of her .338 rifle, the precision required for each shot, and the mathematical certainty that had defined her success in this role. Everything in her training had prepared her for decisions like this, evaluating variables, calculating outcomes, and executing with confidence even when the stakes were impossibly high. When she opened her eyes, General Morrison was watching her with the patient attention of someone who had made similar decisions many times in his own career. She realized that he wasn't just offering her an assignment. He was offering her the chance to join a select group of soldiers who took on the missions that no one else could handle. "I accept, sir." Morrison nodded slowly, as if he had expected that answer but wanted to see how she arrived at it. "Very well. You'll receive detailed instructions within 24 hours. Your current commander will be briefed on your reassignment, and arrangements will be made for your replacement in your current position." He stood up, and Maria followed suit, coming to attention as the formality of the situation reasserted itself. But instead of dismissing her immediately, the general extended his hand for a handshake, a gesture of respect between equals rather than the standard superior-subordinate interaction. "Sergeant Santos, what you've accomplished here has been remarkable. What you're about to undertake will be even more challenging, but I believe you have the capability to excel at this level of operation. The Army is fortunate to have soldiers of your caliber." Maria shook his hand firmly, meeting his gaze with the confidence that had carried her through every difficult mission she had completed. "Thank you for the opportunity, sir. I won't let the Army down." As she walked back across the compound toward her quarters, Maria felt the desert wind carrying away the familiar routine of her current life. Tomorrow she would begin preparing for a new chapter, one that would take her into situations she couldn't yet imagine. But tonight she would clean her rifle one more time, maintaining the ritual that had become her meditation and her anchor in this uncertain world. The sun was setting over the mountains, casting long shadows across the base as soldiers moved through their evening routines. Soon she would be part of a different world entirely, but for now she was still Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, sniper, walking back to finish what she had started in the armory, the careful, methodical maintenance of the weapon that had defined her service and shaped her into the soldier that a general had traveled hundreds of miles to recruit.